Greetings and welcome to the Culture Ward, where we dissect and dismantle pop culture in all its forms. So the first trailer for the upcoming Marvel tentpole SpiderMan Brand New Day finally released this week, and it is breaking records. Now obviously the movie hasn't released yet, so we don't know how the trailer reaction is going to translate into ticket sales, but it definitely seemed to generate excitement for the movie, something that has been sorely lacking for superhero movies in general, and MCU movies in particular in recent years. Does that mean the genre is making a comeback? Is the MCU back? Join us as we review and discuss the new Spider-Man trailer and what it might mean for the future. But first, please take a second to hit that subscribe button and help us grow the channel. As always, it really means a lot to us. And don't forget to like and share the video if you enjoy the content. Now, without further ado, let's get into it. One of my all-time favorite superheroes is Spider-Man, and I'm not the only one. Worldwide, Spider-Man is probably the most popular superhero in history, likely surpassing even Superman and Batman in popularity.
In order not to make him a typical hero, I made him an average guy who was kind of unpopular. He was sort of a nerd. He was an orphan. He was shy and so forth, and it turned out he was somebody that the readers could relate to.
First appearing in the comic anthology Amazing Fantasy number 15 in 1962, a poster of which incidentally hangs behind me in every video, he quickly became a fan favorite. A few months later, in March of 1963, the first issue of The Amazing Spider-Man was released, eventually becoming Marvel's top-selling series and propelling the character to cult icon status. Now, some of the most famous villains first appeared in Spider-Man comics, including the Green Goblin, Dr. Octopus, Sandman, Lizard, Vulture, Kraven the Hunter, Electro, and Mysterio. Now, I'm not going to do a complete history of the web slinger in this video, as it is a pretty long and complicated affair, but I will try to put together a briefish history in the coming months ahead of the release of Brand New Day. Check back for that if you're interested. Anyway, over the years, Spider-Mania spread across the globe, with the character appearing in just about every other medium known to man. From cartoons, films, and video games, to books, records, and theme park rides. And don't forget about toys. Spider-Man merch is ubiquitous and has been for decades. The first animated series, called just Spider-Man, ran from 1967 to 1970 and is one of the best remembered on-screen appearances of him, yielding classic memes like this one. Now, this was followed by multiple other series, such as the 1980 series Spider-Man, Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends in 1981, Spider-Man the Animated Series in 94, Spider-Man Unlimited in 1999, the new animated series in 2003, The Spectacular Spider-Man in 2008, all the way up to present day with Spidey and His Amazing Friends. Now, he also appeared in live-action TV shows, first as a recurring skit on the Electric Company titled Spidey Super Stories, and then with his own live-action TV show, The Amazing Spider-Man in 1978 and 79. Now, in film, he appeared in the Sam Raimi films beginning in 2002, with Spider-Man being famously played by Tobey Maguire. Now, this included Spider-Man 2 in 2004 and Spider-Man 3 in 2007. A few years later, Sony rebooted the series with Andrew Garfield taking over the role with The Amazing Spider-Man in 2012 and Amazing Spider-Man 2 in 2014. A planned third movie in the series never materialized. Instead, the character was again rebooted to appear with the permission and participation of Sony Pictures in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Now played by Tom Holland, the new version of the character first appeared in Captain America Civil War in 2016, and this was followed by his own standalone film, Spider-Man Homecoming, in 2017. Holland's Spider-Man then appeared in both Avengers Infinity War and Endgame before his second standalone film, Far From Home, was released shortly after. And then in 2021, Spider-Man No Way Home was released, bringing back Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield to play variants of Spider-Man alongside Tom Holland, essentially merging the three Spider-Man franchises into one shared continuity. Now, this movie actually broke records, earning almost $2 billion at the post-COVID box office, and it is by far the best of the Tom Holland movies, and it would also round out what would come to be known as the Home Trilogy. And I guess I should also mention the Spider-Verse movies. Into the Spider-Verse, an animated feature film, was released in 2018 following the main protagonist Miles Morales, but it features multiple variants of Spider-Man, including Peter Parker, who's actually one of the main characters. Now, that was followed by Across the Spider-Verse in 2023, which featured like 100 Spider-Man variants, and a third installment, Beyond the Spider-Verse, is probably going to release eventually. It has been delayed multiple times, apparently. Additionally, one of the Spider variants from the Spider-Verse movies, known as Spider-Noir, and voiced by Nicolas Cage, is actually getting his own streaming series on Amazon later this year. And it actually looks really interesting.
I beat up some guys in a bar. And I got plastered.
But you get the picture. Spider-Man is culturally pervasive, everywhere all at once, you might say. And that kind of brings us up to date. I mean, a lot has gone on since No Way Home release, such as the MCU being practically reduced to ashes following several big-budget bombs, an embarrassing slate of Disney Plus content, and what appeared to be declining interest in superhero movies in general, and MCU content in particular. Now, of course, the narrative of superhero fatigue always seems to suffer slightly when movies that are actually good come out, like when Deadpool and Wolverine made more than $1 billion, for instance. But it is true that this past year saw a couple of highly anticipated superhero movies that were actually well received by audiences that still didn't perform as expected, most notably James Gunn's Superman and the Fantastic Four, both of which either barely flopped or barely didn't. So it does seem, at least, that there's some merit to the superhero fatigue argument in general. Anyway, for several months now, they have been trying to build hype around a couple of upcoming movies. First, DC's Supergirl, which is set to premiere in June, and with its first trailer dropping back in December. But more prominently, the MCU has been trying to raise interest in its upcoming blockbusters, Avengers Doomsday, which releases in December of this year, and the next Spider-Man installment, Brand New Day, which is set to release this summer. Now, Doomsday began dropping content as early as last spring with the release of the infamous Empty Chair livestream that went on for 5 hours, just showing a series of 28 chairs with the names of actors and actresses that were supposed to be excited about appearing in the upcoming Marvel team-up movie. However, being that video released more than a year and a half before the movie's release date, it wasn't a surprise that any excitement that it did generate kind of died out already. But then in December, with the release of Avatar: Fire and Ash, Marvel also dropped some teaser trailers for Doomsday with some actually tantalizing hints about who would be appearing in the movie, including one with some of the Fox X-Men characters, such as Patrick Stewart's Professor X and Ian McKellen's Magneto, for instance. And there was some excitement for sure around that. But it was nothing like the excitement generated by the first Spider-Man trailer, which just dropped this week. And while Marvel has been dropping hints, teasers, and live streams about Doomsday for months by now, they have been pretty tight-lipped about the new Spider-Man movie. We did get this brief little behind-the-scenes thing on the first day of shooting, and there have been a couple of tantalizing leaks since, like Sadie Sink showing up in leaked set photos, but mostly it has been a secret what to expect in the new movie. Well, finally, with about 4 months to go before release day, a pretty good trailer has just dropped. Let's take a look and we'll talk briefly about it. Alright, so before we start playing this, right out of the gate, let's just acknowledge that the title of the movie, Brand New Day, actually comes from a story arc in the Amazing Spider-Man comics, which began in 2008 with issue number 546. Now, in that story arc, Peter is in similar circumstances to what he is in the movies, with everyone having forgotten who he is due to a spell, and he and Mary Jane aren't dating, and he's just kind of alone. Now, although the backstory is quite different between the comics and the movies, it kind of hints at where they are in the movie. Anyway, let's get going on this.
I can't believe our first hit MIC! MJ, come on, pretend like you're not the happiest you've ever been in your entire life.
I can.
I knew it!
Okay, so the first few clips seem to be highlighting Peter's loneliness. Remember, he gave up all of his friends at the end of No Way Home when he had Doctor Strange make everybody forget who Peter Parker is. Now his friends have moved on without him, and obviously he's feeling alone and isolated.
Hi, my name is Peter Parker. You don't remember me, but we used to know each other. Something bad was going to happen, and the only way to stop it.
We also see that he's wearing just a basic cloth suit, not the super spider suits that he got from Tony Stark, making him, I guess, more independent, more cut off from the larger superhero world, I guess.
Was to make everyone forget about me. Because I'm not just Peter Parker. I'm SpiderMan.
The hell, Frank? You just hit me with a van!
Put your whip. Suit yourself. Mother.
Alright, so I guess that confirms the Punisher is going to be in the movie. John Bernthal returning to the role. That's always good news.
Go home!
And sometimes Spider-Man has to do the hard thing, even if it breaks Peter Parker's heart. What is happening to me?
So first, let's just acknowledge that classic Spider-Man motif playing softly in the background. That's actually from the original cartoon from the 60s.
Spider-Man, Spider-Man, does whatever a spider can.
So it looks like something's happening to Peter's physiology, and he even appears to have grown organic web shooters, like the Spider-Man in the Raimiverse. Now, it looks like Peter's mutation might be evolving. It appears that they are at least borrowing from the whole Man-Spider storyline from the comics, where Peter's powers grow stronger, more spider-like. I just hope they don't have him grow extra arms in the movie.
Excuse me, Dr. Banner. I need your help.
What did you say your name was?
It looks like he goes to see Bruce Banner here to try to get answers, and it is nice to see that it's just regular Bruce Banner, not Hulk Ruffalo here. There is a rumor that the Savage Hulk will actually return in this movie. If true, maybe some folks at Marvel are actually listening to fans, because nobody liked Smart Hulk.
DNA is mutating. It would be enormously dangerous.
Spiders have 3 life cycles. When between cycles, it can leave the spider vulnerable to threats.
We are faced with a danger that we can't control.
Alright, so what's going on here seems to be some sort of a mind control thing. The lady in the tank apparently was being mind controlled, and then that switches to the damage control officers. We do know that Sadie Sink is in this movie, and we are led to believe that her character is the one doing the mind control. Now, the question, of course, is whether Sadie Sink is playing Jean Grey, as is the most popular theory, or some other heretofore unknown character.
One we can't even see.
So this appears to be the head of the Department of Damage Control, which is the regulatory agency that was created after the Battle of New York in the first Avengers movie. They've made several on-screen appearances since, including being the primary antagonist in the recent Wonder Man show. Now this guy is played by Tremel Tillman, some of you may know from Severance. Now what's interesting is that he's sitting there talking to Spider-Man. Recall that at the beginning of No Way Home, it's Damage Control that was threatening to arrest Peter Parker. But now they appear interested in working with, well, Spider-Man anyway.
You can see. Stay out of my way.
So that's our first look at Scorpion. This is one of the guys from Spider-Man Homecoming. We saw him, I think most recently, in the post-credit scene of Homecoming, talking to the Vulture in prison, trying to find out Spider-Man's identity.
Losing it, kid.
And for those spiders who make it through,
the iconic shot from the comic book, taken directly from the cover of Amazing Fantasy number 15. Again, the poster that hangs right behind me in every video.
amounts to a kind of
And then we get glimpses of Spider-Man fighting all these other classic villains, such as Boomerang, Tarantula, and lastly, we see him fighting what I assume is the Hand, the mystical organization of ninjas that were prominent in Daredevil Season 2 from the Netflix show, and the Defenders.
rebirth.
Let's take a look at this frame for a minute. So, this is a great shot of Spider-Man fighting the Hand, and there is speculation that there's been some photoshopping to this scene for the trailer. Now, remember when the No Way Home trailer came out, they actually removed Andrew Garfield and Tobey Maguire from the frame to hide that they were appearing in the movie. Well, folks are speculating that they may be doing the same thing again here, with the most obvious guess being that Daredevil is being cropped out, since the Hand has always been a Daredevil villain, and rumors of his appearance in the movie have already surfaced. Well, we'll see. It will be great to have Daredevil in the movie.
Birth.
Nice flowers.
Oh, they're a housewarming gift.
I'm MJ.
I'm just a neighbor from across the hall.
Friendly neighbor.
July 31st. All right. That's it. I mean, it was a pretty good trailer. Certainly gives us a lot to think about, and honestly, a lot to be excited about for the first time in seemingly forever. And I'm not alone in that assessment. This trailer has literally broken records, becoming the most watched trailer in the first 24 hours of release in history. So according to this Variety article, Spider-Man Brand New Day trailer shatters record with 718.6 million views, the biggest movie trailer launch in history. Spider-Man Brand New Day is already web-slinging its way to history. The Sony Pictures trailer, released on Wednesday morning, has become the biggest trailer of all time with 718.6 million views in 24 hours. The Spidey trailer broke the previous record held by Deadpool and Wolverine, which had 365 million views. So yeah, almost twice as much as the previous record holder. In just 8 hours, the Spider-Man Brand New Day trailer had 373 million views, already breaking the record by Deadpool 3, which dropped during the 2024 Super Bowl. Now, coincidentally, Deadpool 3 had jumped the 2021 Spider-Man No Way Home trailer, which had 355 million views in 24 hours, to put itself in the record books. To build excitement for the Brand New Day trailer, Sony released tiny snippets one day in advance showing moments from the full video. Brand New Day is the first time Tom Holland has suited up as Spidey since No Way Home, which united past wall crawlers Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield for a universe-crossing blockbuster. No Way Home went on to gross $1.9 billion at the global box office. So people are still excited about superhero movies apparently. At least Spider-Man movies. And I know Spider-Man is a special case, being one of the most popular comic characters ever, but I think there's more than that. The last Spider-Man movie made almost $2 billion. That was followed by Deadpool and Wolverine, which made over $1.3 billion. People went to see these movies, not because they were franchises or they were necessarily superhero movies, but because they gave people what they wanted. Characters they loved, action they enjoyed, and stories that connected with them. In other words, people went to see these movies because they were good movies. People still like good movies, is what I'm trying to say, regardless of their genre. Give people what they want, don't murder their favorite characters with character assassination, and don't lecture them. Don't retcon their characters into something different. Deliver the characters and the stories that people like, and they will show up. And I think people will definitely show up for this one. It may even be another $2 billion record breaker. I guess we'll see, with Spider-Man Brand New Day scheduled to release in theaters on July 31st. What do you think? Are you excited for the new Spider-Man movie? Will you be seeing this one in the theaters? Why or why not? Join the conversation in the comments below. As always, thank you so much for watching the video. Please like and subscribe if you enjoyed the content. Bye for now. We hope to see you next time in the Culture Ward.